All right, welcome back. We are Game 3004, that's Mobile Game Dev 2 in the winter 2022 semester at George Brown, and it's week 2, part 2 of our broadcast, recording, and session together. And this part, we're going to be talking about Lab 1. And Lab 1, where we last left off, is we were talking about how to bring in, create low poly 3D tile set in Blender. We want to bring that into Unity. And that's really our lab goals for today. So we did some of this. We created 2 Blender tiles already, right? But now what we need to do is we need to bring in the ground texture and do some, create the materials, and then finally do some of this. Okay, so we're going to get to this part next. We did this kind of in the first hour, the Blender hour. Okay, let's get into it. So what I've done with you is a couple things. Up online, I've given you the Blender starter project right here. So you can always start with this. I'm going to also download it myself. So again, I'm going to kind of download the project, and I've got a place for it. It's kind of like a sandbox where I'm going to work with it right now. And then I'm going to upload it to Unity in a second. Okay, so again, what I want to do is I want to put it into this 3004 sandbox, right? And you guys, if I'm not wrong, are section 401. So that's you guys right there. And this is where the tiles.blend file is going to go. Okay, unless I did it wrong. As a 401, right? Yep. And to check that, right, I'm going to go into my downloads folder, into 3000, this one here, that's 401. Oh yeah, I see what I did. I also copied in the texture. So the gravel cobble texture, make sure inside of your little sandbox, make a little folder that you're going to work with, and download the gravel cobble texture in here as well as the blend file. Please do that now, if you haven't done this already. So we're going to use this in a second. Okay, let's launch Blender. And again, when we open up Blender, we want to open it with admin rights. Now, if I just did this, right-clicked and open, that would not be good. It would take a long time for that to happen. So it might take a little bit of time if you did it my way, just not like now, right? The other way to do it would be actually to launch Blender first and then load the blend file, okay? So that might take a little, a bit of shorter time. So these are our tiles that we made last day, okay? So you should be here with me right now. So first of all, do you have your tiles, and are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you just haven't started Blender yet or if it's still starting. Okay, I got some check marks. I got one check mark. And deep, thank you. I got Herman, Lucas, Tong, Eric, thank you. Hopefully we'll have, if we have most people, that's nice, but I was hoping to have everybody. That's okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move on now. So thank you for that you guys are following along. All right, so last time we worked with these tiles, and I have 2 of them here in the outliner in Blender. I can turn off one tile and show you another one, right? I want to make sure that the first one is clicked and selected. That's the first step I want to do. And on the right now, staying in object mode. I'm in object mode. So staying in object mode, on the right-hand side, you're going to see that there is a number of tabs here for this particular game object, okay? On the right, I have this tab right here, which is the materials properties, and this tab right here, which is the texture properties. We don't have a material slot associated with this game object yet. Let's add one. Please click this plus button. It's going to add a material slot, and let's click new to add a new material slot. And let's rename this thing to what it's supposed to be. I want to make it so that it's a concrete material. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of select a concrete color, hexadecimal color, to apply to this thing. Okay, so let's look it up. So again, I'm going up online, and I'm going to look at a concrete gray color. And the color I'm going to use is 808076. That's going to be my concrete gray color. Okay, so back to Blender. How do I do that? Well, once I've made my material, we have shader properties that are right here. We're using a principled BSDF shader. That's what it is. And under here, we can click on, next where it says base color, we can click in there And when we do that, you can see that I can select hex as an option and then put in those values. Okay, so again, 80, 80, 76, right? So in here, you can put those numbers. 808076, and then press enter. And that is the new material color that we're going to apply here. But notice that there's no change. The reason why there's no change is because we're not using a shaded viewport. On the top here, we're going to change to Viewport Shading, which is now going to be the right color for our concrete color. Okay, so that means our entire tile is like a concrete gray color. This is our first material. We're going to add another material. Let's click again, over near the material area, underneath the concrete material. We're going to add another one by clicking the plus button. And the new material, we're going to add another new material here by clicking the new button. And if we double click, what we're going to do is we're going to rename this thing Gravel Cobble Ground Material. Okay, because remember we have that gravel cobble texture, this one that I shared with you on Blackboard. Please, if you don't have this downloaded, please download it and put it into a sandbox like this right now, because we're going to use it. Okay. And what I want to do with this gravel cobble ground material, I don't want to change the shader properties yet. What I want to do instead is add a texture slot. You guys have done something like this in OpenGL. I'm going to click on texture properties. Again, this is while the gravel cobble ground material that I've created just now is selected. Okay, click on your texture properties, add a new texture slot. Rename it from texture to gravel cobble ground texture, please. You won't have it unless you're in object mode. Please go to object mode. If you're in edit mode, you won't see it because it'll look like this, right? You want to go into object mode. All right, in object mode, now we have a gravel cobble ground material, and we've added a texture slot, which we've renamed gravel cobble ground texture. Now I want to click open, and I want to select the gravel cobble ground texture that's inside of my sandbox. That's why I had my blend file in the sandbox, not in some downloads folder, because then there's too many things to look at. So this is the gravel cobble ground texture JPEG. I'm loading it up. And you should see the image in preview form come up here. There's also an extra button right here. Take a look. See this little button right here? It looks like a little box, like a cardboard box that's appearing right here. Okay. That little cardboard box is actually pack image. We want to do that, so click it, please. It's going to show that there's envelopes in the box or image files. And when we pack an image, what we're doing is we are attaching the image information to the blend file. Now save Blender, please. Save. Control S. Or you can go File, Save, whatever makes you happy. Okay, so now we have two materials. Let's go through it again. We have, when we're having tile 1 selected, I should be able to go to my material tab, and I have my concrete material, which has a concrete color we associated with it, and a gravel cobble ground material. But notice if I open up, if I'm clicking on my gravel cobble ground material and I open up my preview, and first of all, let's change my preview from this to a cube, because that's more accurate. That's closer to what we've done here. Notice there's no texture applied because we need to do another step. We've loaded it, we've created the texture slot, but now what we have to do is where we go down to the base color, and again, this is for the gravel cobble ground material. I'm saying that over and over again because people will mix it up with this concrete material, and that's not where we want the texture slot. We want it here, right? So when this is selected, we go down here, and we, instead of choosing the color, we choose this little dot, this little yellow dot here. This little yellow dot is like a button. Okay, let me show you that again. So this, under base color, click the dot, and then go down to where it says image texture and select it. Now it's going to ask you either to open or new. We don't want to do either of these because we already have opened a texture. We're going to go down to this little drop-down menu that has a little picture next to it. And we're going to click it and select the gravel cobble ground texture. Woo! And when I scroll up, you're going to see an image of a preview like this. Are you with me? Checkbox, check if you're with me. X if you're behind or don't know what the heck I did. Okay. And I need you to be with me because this way I'm going over it slowly, slowly. And so you get what I'm doing, right? Okay, that's good. Most of you are with me, it looks like. Thank you. I'm going to move on. Thank you for that feedback. So now that we've done this, this is okay, but we're not seeing it here. Why? Because notice there are two materials. There's this one. Let's change the preview to a square as well. A cube, I mean. So now there's this one and this one. This concrete material is what's being applied. We need to apply the cobblestone material to somewhere else. In order for us to do that, we need to go into edit mode. So now we're going to go from object mode on the top to edit mode. You can also get there by pressing and toggling the tab key. When I go into edit mode, you're going to see I have a bunch of faces that are available to me. What I want to do is I only want to select the ground tiles that we see here. I've made a few divisions, subdivisions. We want to select the ground tiles. You can do it one by one. So select shift like this, or you can use the circle select, right? Which is the C button. I can scroll in or scroll out with my middle mouse wheel to make it bigger, more selection, or smaller selection. I want to make it a small selection radius. And then what I can do with it from this perspective only is just do one of these. I can kind of select what I can see. Try not to select anything else, no buildings, just the ground. And you may have to change your perspective, right? And to stop selecting with circle select, press escape. And then change your perspective by rotating the scene. You can do that by clicking the middle mouse wheel and dragging, right? And back to circle select mode. Try and do it as much as possible and select the area that you can see on the ground. If you make a mistake, we can always fix it. That's the thing. But we don't want to take too long doing this because it can be a tedious process if you do it by hand. There we go. Mine's done. Oh, wait. No, it's not done. There we go. Now it's done. And you can see now if I look at it from the top down and rotate around, they were pretty good. Notice what I want to do is sit in this perspective where to the right is my x-axis and up is my y-axis. Sit like this. Okay, nice, excellent. But now we want to apply this other texture. So when I click on gravel, cobble, ground material, and there's an assign button. With everything here selected, click assign. You're going to get something that looks like this. By the way, the process is the same if I want to apply multiple materials on a single object. But there's a problem. The problem is that the ground texture, the cobblestones are massive. They're like 1 meter wide. That's not accurate. Okay, we need to change this. And at the top, we have several different modes. We have layout mode, the first one up here. We have a modeling mode, right? This is kind of when we're in edit mode. Let's change this, all of the modes, so that we see viewport shading, please. So this is modeling mode. So layout mode, modeling mode, sculpting mode. We don't care about this. We're not sculpting anything right now, but we can also change it to this if you really want to, right? And we have UV editing mode, but it's a split screen. In order for us to change the viewport shading, we need to just modify where the middle is. So move it to the left and expose the viewport shading button on the top here, which is very important. So we get a sense of what this looks like, and then go to the middle of the area, the division, and pull it to the right again. Okay, now we're cooking, right? And what you're seeing is a representation of all of the UV islands, that's these things on the left. I'm going to scroll out. You can scroll in and out with your mouse wheel. Wherever I am, I can scroll in and out. If I'm here with my mouse wheel, I can control the right side. If I'm here with my mouse, I can control the left side. That's how it goes. So these little squares here are UV islands. UV stands for X and Y texture coordinates. Okay, that's what they are. And what I want to do is I want to select all of these UV islands. And you're going to go here to select, click all, or you can toggle it on and off with the A key. What I need to do is I need to scale these UV islands. Let's look at it from the same perspective. I want to scale these UV islands up 4 times. Let's do that. So I'm going to say scale, that's the S key, S for Sam. And we're going to pull it out. And we're going to keep pulling and keep pulling and keep pulling till I get something that looks like about this. Where on the left, I'm going to stop now, you're going to see at least 3 little cobblestones. And to be accurate, so it's exactly 4, on the bottom left corner, you're going to see this resize box. It's not quite 4, it's close. Let's change these numbers, right? So we're going to change it to 4, 4, 4. Please do that right away. That's going to make these things resize exactly where we want them to be. Okay, save. And guess what, guys? Our first tile, tile number 1, is complete. It looks pretty good. Are you with me? Check mark if you're with me. You did this. X if you're not, or if you're far behind. Okay, Herman, I'm waiting. And talk to me. If there's a problem, I can help you. Can you show the resizing again? Yeah, so what you do, right, is you press S. So here, I'm going to do it for the other tile, okay? And then I'll show you how to do it for this one. Let's continue with the other tile for a second, and then I'll come back to this one, okay? Yeah, you have to change it manually, all right? So the viewport shading. So let's go back to layout. So here's my layout for my tile, right? And let's hide this tile, or hide this one, and let's show the other one. Okay, let's just do it again, and it'll give you a chance to do it. First of all, this new tile does not have any materials. We don't want to add the materials, new ones. We don't want to do this. We want to select the first one. So the first one is we have 2 materials, concrete material and gravel cobble material. Let's add the concrete material first. Add. And what we want to do is we want to add a new material slot, and we want to add the second material. Add. And now we have the second material here. Okay, notice again, we don't see this because we haven't applied the changes. All right, so if you missed this thing, here it is again. Watch. This is on the second tile now. We just pressed the plus button. That's all I'm doing here, the plus button on the right here, Liam. All right, so here is the next piece, the next thing we're going to do. Ready? I'm going to switch into edit mode by going to the top left corner. Here it is all again. That's why I did 2 of these, right? By default, it has the first concrete material. That's what we're in right now. All of this is concrete material. I want to switch to gravel cobble material and deselect all. Make sure by accident on the top here, somehow I have these 4 tiles selected. I want to deselect all. So I want to go select none, right? And I want to select the floor of the tile, and I can use circle select mode again. So pick a nice perspective and do some selections, please. So you're only selecting the floor. And if you select something wrong, let's say you use something like this, don't worry, you can always undo, right? So escape and undo, and you can do it again, or you can redo. If it's too much to undo, redo. And you can always go and use circle select, and if you press shift and circle select, you can unselect or deselect. Okay, don't worry about it. Remember that it's not difficult to use. If I want to escape from circle select, I press escape. And then I can look at a different perspective. As an example, maybe something that's more accessible for me, and press circle select again, and just keep selecting until you get the entire ground. I'm going slow. Hopefully you're ahead of me. Okay, getting there. Your tile might be simpler than mine or more complex. Keep on changing your perspective until you get everything. Looks like I got everything. Okay? And this is the orientation we want to sit in. with the x-axis to the right and the y-axis forward and the z-axis up, because in Blender, z-axis is up. Awesome. Okay, this is what we want. But we don't have any ground cobbles again, right? Well, we need to do this. So this is the part that people miss. Once I've selected everything, make sure that you're on the material that says gravel, cobble, ground material. And with everything selected, click Assign. Then you should get this. Notice at the top right, we have our Viewport Shading on. If you have it this way, you won't see it. And if you have it this way, it'll look different. It has to be the middle one. Okay? Now, from here is where people messed up. It's very common. Don't worry about it. Don't get mad at yourself. All right? What we need to do from here is you need to go at the top where we have layout and go to modeling. And then from modeling to UV editing, you can see UV editing on the left will have this. And sometimes it won't even show us our map, just like this is not showing us our map. The previous group it did. In order for you to see your UV, your actual texture at the top, if it's not showing, right? If you're in UV editing mode, you can pull down your texture so you can see what it looks like and then scroll out. So at the top, you can see gravel, cobble texture. You can pull it down as a pull down. Okay, next, what you want to do is you want to select your islands, your VUV islands on the left. So you can go select all, or you can toggle it with the A key for Alex, A for Alex. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to scale this up. You want to scale this up to 4 times. So first we're going to press the S key, and we're going to start pulling it to the right and scaling it until we see that there's at least 3 cobblestones around right here that are selected. And as soon as I click, I left click again, on the bottom right, there's a resize area that shows up, this little resize button. We can select it and change these values so that they're exactly 4. 4, 4, 4. Okay, and now we have the second tile done. Again, I'm going to ask you that question. Let's save. Save. Are you with me? Do you have both tiles done? You have one tile done. Check mark if you're done. X if you want me to wait because you're behind. And the process isn't that difficult. We already understand. You guys are programmers. You understand what materials are, right? It's a material program. That's what they are. And you understand what texture slots are, right? They're a frame buffer. That's what they are. They're a buffer. We can assign a buffer to a texture slot. We can adjust or assign a texture to the texture slot. And the texture slot can be associated with the material program, right? The material program is going to be associated with a shader. So the material, I always think about the material as a container that has many properties. And why we're exposing the properties from the shader that's connected to the material. Shader and the material are 2 different things, but you can have the material display whatever shader you want. The material is a container for the shader. Eric, are you good? How are we doing? Just waiting another minute, just so you're all together. Okay, great. Excellent. All right, now that we're here, let's go back to layout. And we're going to click on tile 1 and make tile 2 go away. So we have tile 1. You should have both tiles now scaled properly and everything else. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to export these 2 tiles as FBX. So we're going to do 1 tile at a time. Okay. So again, I'm going to select the tile on the right in the outliner. Notice that the orange selector outline, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to go to the top left corner and go from File, Export, FBX. File, Export, Fbx. And I'm going to click it. And it's going to come up and it's going to say, hey, what do you want me to do? On the right, you can see I have some options. I want to check selected objects and I want to check mesh. That's it. Nothing else. Everything else stays as is or default. And the bottom where it says tiles.fbx, I want to change it to tile1.fbx, tile1.fbx. And then I want you to export FBX, please. These are the settings. I haven't changed anything here, here, or here. I clicked on selected objects and mesh. That's all I did. And then clicked export FBX. And now we have our first tile exported. Let's do the same thing by hiding the first tile and showing the second tile, selecting it in the outliner by clicking onto it, right? And here we have the second tile selected. We can see the orange selector outline, right? And we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Export, and we're going to go to FBX. Again, we're going to do the same thing. Blender remembers, so it remembers the settings. Limit to selected objects, selected, and only mesh. We just need to change the name of the tile to tile 2. And then click Export. And we're done. Save Blender and close it down. Any questions before we move on to Unity? Because it's the first part of what we're doing today. We're finished Blender. Blender's done. Any questions? Can I move on? Yes? If you want me to stay with Blender, please mention it, or else I'm going to go. All right, cool. Lucas is okay. I guess we'll take Lucas's word for it and move on. Herman says okay too. And Hardik and a couple of other people. Liam, Joaquin, and let's move on. Even Eric. Okay, great. So we'll close this down. And now that we have, these are the files we have in our sandbox. Okay, this is important. You should have the same files as me. Next part, I want to create a Unity project, and it's got to go inside of my desktop. So on my desktop, that's where I'm going to put it anyway. I have under GBC, GAME3004, I have section 400. I'm going to make a new section. You're going to make one that's called, for all your labs, you're going to make a GAME3004-W2022, -labs. Me, I'm just going to call mine section 401, right? And inside section 401, that's where I'm going to create my Unity project inside of here. Okay, let's do it now. So I'm going to go into Unity, and I'm going to launch a brand new Unity project, right? So I'm going to go New Project. I'm going to select the right editor version, 2021.2 7F1, and I'm going to select 3D Mobile, because that's what we're doing. If this is not an option for you and you have to download it like this, please do so now. And then we're going to rename the project, so it's going to be, in your case, Lab 1, right? In my case, it's going to be GAME3004-W2022, and it's going to be Lab 1. And I'm going to put it in the right spot. So I'm going to click this. It's going to go up to desktop. I'm going to go to GBC. It's going to point to 3004 and into section 401. Okay? And then click Select Folder. When I do that, I'm going to click Create Project, and I'm going to wait for it to launch and let it do its job. So now what Unity is doing, like before, is it's gathering together its packages, it's setting up its library folder, and it's scaffolding out all the folders and files that it needs. And it's going to take a second to do so. So do this with me now. Okay, cool. It's getting there. And it will take a second to do. And yours might be faster than mine, or mine might be faster than yours. It doesn't matter. If you're watching the video, please fast forward. And the next step is we're going to set up our structure and we're going to put it up on GitHub. And I'm going to use GitHub Desktop to do so. So what you can do while you're waiting is download and install GitHub Desktop. So if you go to desktop.github.com, this is the tool that I'm going to be using. So copy that. I want to put that inside of your chat there. That's the tool. I'm going to also put it up on YouTube for those people who are live on YouTube. There we go. All right, so download this tool for Windows. If you're a Mac user, download it for Mac. Hopefully you're not a Mac user, because that would cause extra frills. All right, so here we are. We're in this ugly setup. I don't like it. I'm going to switch from default to tall. We're going to set up our little mobile first template, right? And what I want to do is I want to switch the slider to the left so it's a list. I want to get rid of the tutorial info folder, delete. And I'm also going to get rid of the README file. Let's get rid of the README file, delete that too. We don't need it. We're going to rename the scenes from scenes to square bracket scenes, like we did last semester. This is all review. We're going to make our structure inside of scenes. Let's rename the sample scene to main. Nothing new here. In our assets, what you want to do is set up a couple of additional folders. One of them is going to be the scripts folder. We're also going to have a materials folder. I'm going to also have a textures folder. There's going to be a models folder, as well as a prefabs folder. These are all folders we're going to use a lot of them today. Okay? And because we want to maintain the structure of our code up online, I'm going to open this up and install .gitkeep files in each folder that has nothing in them right now. So let's say right click, and I'm going to show an explorer, and it's going to bring up my folder structure. And inside of my scripts, I'm going to add a brand new file called .gitkeep. And if you don't see .gitkeep, or if it doesn't allow you to do this, maybe it's because in the View menu, you don't have file name extensions or hidden items checked, which you should. Okay? And now that I've got this .gitkeep file, I want to copy it and put it in all the other empty folders. So in Assets, I'm going to go to Materials and paste. I'm going to go into Models and paste, into Prefabs and paste, and into Textures and paste. So I've got a gitkeep file in all of them. Nice. This is our folder structure, and this is where we want to start. The only thing we're missing is in Window. I want to go to General, and I want to go to Console. And I want to take this console window and put it underneath my assets over here and clear any kind of messages. Okay. I want to also move this little thing in Unity 2021.2. We have a floating control bar or key, shortcut bar. I'm going to put it up here for the tools, all these tools. I'm going to park it up here. That's me. That's what I want. I'm going to save. Okay. File, save project. And I want to exit. I want to exit Unity, please. A regular text file, Liam. Regular text file. Yeah, exactly what Liam is saying. All right, so now that I've done that, I want to put section 401 up on GitHub. And I'm going to use GitHub Desktop to do it. You may have been asked to, for security or whatever, there might be some things that came up with GitHub Desktop. What I want you to do now is I want you to go to File, and I want you to click New Repository, please, or Control N. It's going to ask me where I want it. Now, here is the trick. I want to go to the containing folder for GAME3004. So that means here, GAME3004. So the containing folder for GAME3004. So if I have it in GBC, that's where I'm going to go. I'm not going inside 3004, right? No, right? Well, actually, what I really want to do is be right here for me. GAME3004 for me. For you, it's going to be whatever the containing folder is for your labs, okay? Because I want all the labs to be in the same folder, right? All of your labs. So I'm going to sit here in GAME3004. So that is the target. And then for my repository name, that is going to be this name, section 401. I'm not going to actually select it. I'm just going to put it in here. So it's going to be section 401. For you, you might have the containing folder be the desktop or wherever else you have it. And then in your name, you're going to be GAME3004-W2022-labs, all your labs. I'll type that example. You may not choose that, but that might be the example you might do. You might say GAME3004 in the winter 2022 semester labs. That might be the example you might use, okay? And that is going to be the containing folder for all of your labs, all right? Not just one of them. One thing we want to do is we want to also add a Git Ignore file. So let's choose Unity and press Enter. And also initialize this whole repository, the outside repository, with a README file, please. And then click Create Repository. It's going to create a repository, and it's going to ask me if I want to initialize Git large file support. I'm going to say not now. Don't do it. Cool. What did it do? Well, if I go to the operating system, then if I'm inside section 401, you're going to see a .git folder here. And some Git attributes files, a Git Ignore file, and a README file. I want you to take that Git Ignore file, please. Copy it. And I want you to go inside Lab 1 and paste it in there. That Git Ignore file is a Unity compatible Git Ignore file that's going to ignore library. We don't want to put that up on GitHub. Let's go back out to the containing folder. And then this README file, it's going to talk about what this thing is. So I'm going to open it up in your favorite editor. It could be Notepad. For me, it's in Visual Studio Code. And it says section 401. I don't want that. I want to make it something like GAME3004 in the winter 2022 semester. And then it's section, one day when it finishes doing its thing, section 401 labs. And I might put a comment like, you know, master repo for GAME3004 in the winter 2022 semester at George Brown. Lab, you know, and maybe I could put something like lab repo, master lab repo for GAME3004 in the winter 2022 semester at George Brown College. Yay! And then save. That's a change. And I'm going to close this off. And now I have a README file and I have some stuff that I put in here. Now we can go back to GitHub desktop. You notice there's two changes. I'm going to just say updated README file. That's all I did, .md, right? And I also updated the .git ignore file, but that's okay. I'm going to click commit to main, and then I want to click publish repository. Herman says, so all of our labs will be on this one repo. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's publish the repository now. Publish repository. It gives you by default, keep this code private. Leave that checked for you. For me, it's going to be unchecked. I'm going to rename this thing the way I want it. So again, it's going to be GAME3004 in the winter 2022 semester, and it's section 401 labs. For you, it's not that. It's going to be probably just this labs, no section 401. And you're going to keep it private. I'm not. I'm going to choose an organization, which is George Brown College, right? George Brown College. And I'm going to click publish repository. For you, you're going to get a series of pop-ups that say, do you authorize, blah, blah, blah. You're going to say yes. Meanwhile, I'm publishing my repository online. And when I go online, you're going to see this repository, github.com/George Brown College. And the first repository you see is going to be the one that has your containing folders. Okay. It has a README file inside of it. Now, what you want to do is you want to share your repository with me. So you're going to go in here and you're going to go to settings and you're going to go to collaborators and teams. You may have to log in, right? And after you log in, you're going to go to add people and you're going to type in my last name only, which I'm going to give you on the chat message. So that's what it is, right? And again, I'll put that up here for people who are watching online. All right, and here inside of my my message, I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to copy it in. If I put the whole thing, it's only going to be one person, me, not the other me, this me. And then click me and press add me to this folder, okay, to the repository. When you do that, I'm going to get a bunch of emails from you guys. Please do this now if you haven't done it already. Okay. And now there's going to be one folder for all your labs for the remainder of semester. So you never have to share this with me again. You're just going to add to the repository, right? Yeah, I got yours, Liam. And let me see what else I got. Who else did I get? I got, let's see here. I got some Zoom notifications, and I got Liam. And by the way, what it looks like when I'm going to use, if you don't mind, Liam, I'm going to use your invite to show people what it looks like, if you're okay with that. So here's how it goes. It goes, here's Liam's invite. Okay, so here's what Liam's invite looks like up online. You can see that there is an invitation, right? I just got Herman's invite too. And I'm going to click view invitation, right? And you can see I can accept or decline. Okay, I'm going to decline. I'm joking. I'm going to accept. There we go. And you can see as soon as I accept it, it says you have now push access. And that's how it works. Okay, just so you can see the other side of it. Maybe you've never seen it before. And same thing, I've seen Mandeep, I see Herman. Please go ahead and do this now, as this is going to be the easiest way to do this as opposed to waiting and doing it later. Okay, excellent, good. So this is the first part. So now you should be with me. I'm going to go back to what we talked about. I'm going slow. And the reason why I want to go slow is I want to get this done first. Once we've got this, we're going to keep adding to this through the entire time together today. Let's go back and go into Unity again. Let's open up Lab 1. All of your labs are going to be done just like this. We're going to add a new lab to that folder, that containing folder. And then we're going to add it to GitHub. Once we've added it to GitHub, we're good to go. Now I'm back in. But notice that in my hierarchy, for whatever reason, up here, I'm not logged in with a particular scene. Please go into scenes and double click on main in order for us to see this. Okay, next, what I want to do is I want to go into that sandbox. Remember that sandbox we were using before on our, wherever you put the files? Inside of our files, I have a sandbox for you guys. This one, I have a couple things here, right? I have my tile 1 Fbx. Let's use it. Let's look at it in a list mode so we can see these in list form. And what I want to do is I want to start pulling these files in here. I can't pull the blend file. The blend file right now at this recording, it's because I'm using Blender 3.0, is not compatible with 2021.2 whatever. I can't pull it in. It doesn't detect it. Maybe in future videos it will allow it, no problem again, because it was allowed before. Right now, what I want to do is I want to pull in both my tile 1 and tile 2. I want to select them both and pull both of them inside of the models folder like this. Just drag and drop this right into the models folder and let go. And then I want you to grab this gravel, cobble, ground and pull that into the textures folder and let go. And now let's check out what we've got. We can safely close this down now. We don't need this anymore. This is just a little sandbox where we're playing around. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at our models. We have our tile 1 and tile 2. And if you go down to the bottom of the right-hand side of your tile and you kind of pull this up, you should be able to see a preview at the bottom. So here's our tile 1 and here's our tile 2. Very different tiles, okay? So for both tiles, let's select them both. These are both models that we've selected after I've imported them. I'm going to go to Model, right? And I'm going to click on the following: Read Write, check mark. Generate Colliders, check mark. Generate Light Map UVs, check mark. And then click Apply, please. That's the first set of properties we're going to align for our tiles. Next, I can't click Materials with both of them selected, so I'm going to click only one, the first one. I'm going to go to Materials, and underneath Materials, you'll see Extract Materials at this point. I'm going to click Extract Materials, and I'm going to choose the Materials folder to extract the materials within. When I do so, inside of my materials, I'm going to get two: a concrete material, which looks wrong, and a gravel cobble ground material, which shows the image of my gravel cobble material. Okay? You can also change the object that you want to look at by clicking it here. I want to look at it like this, so I can see what it looks like. That's the gravel cobble ground material. The concrete material, you should also change the object so it matches what it is. In our case, it's a cube, right? Because it makes more sense. But it's pretty dark. And you know what? The color that came in from Blender is wrong. Let's click inside of the albedo, or albedo, depending on how you want to say this. And you click onto that, and you can see that the color from an RGB perspective is wrong. And look at the hexadecimal. That's also wrong. The hexadecimal values are, let's go back out to that, where it's here. No, it's here. The hexadecimal values are 80, 80, 76, or 128, 128, 118 for RGB values. Let's use 80, 80, 76. So again, when I click onto this albedo color, I put in down here 80, 80, 76. So remove all the color and go 80, 80, 76. Now you can see that the color is correct. Press Enter and close it off. That's the correct color for my concrete material. Sometimes Blender does that stuff. Don't worry. We do see on the gravel cobble material that there is a texture. The texture that we brought in is connected to the albedo color, which is good. This is the texture that's connected here. That's what that is. Okay, cool. So we got our materials set up, but we have another model, and the tile 2 model also needs to extract the materials. We're going to do this, and it's going to be duplicates of the other ones. Don't worry, we're just going to delete them. So do it again now. Extract materials. We're going to target the same place as before, except this time we're going to get duplicate named materials. Concrete material 1, gravel cobble 1. We're going to get rid of them. Delete, please. Now, we're going to have some issues. We're going to have to realign those. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take my first model, my tile 1, and drag it into the scene. And it's going to look pretty good for the most part. Right? Pretty good. Everything is okay. But let's make this into a prefab. So I'm going to go call this tile 1. And I'm going to drag and drop this tile 1 into the prefabs folder. And then I'm going to original prefab is what I'm going to select here. Okay, now this is a prefab. I can delete this one. Delete. Let's do the same thing for the second model. You're going to notice a nice pink color. This pink color is there because I've deleted the materials. It says missing material. Let's go into the materials folder and grab the gravel cobble material first and drag it to the first slot. And then the second slot is going to be the concrete material. And now you have the same materials used. I'm going to rename this thing to tile 2 and drag and drop it into the prefabs folder. and original prefab. Hey, nice. All right. And what I want to do now is I just want to delete this. And I want to save everything in Unity. And I'm going to file, save project, close Unity down. And I'm going to push this up to GitHub. Look at all these changes, 27 changes. I'm going to say added Blender or import. I'll say imported Blender tiles to Unity. Commit main. And I want to push origin. Nice. Back to Unity. Back to Unity. Okay, now that I'm back into Unity, we should have those two prefabs. And my question to you is going to be, are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you're not. Eric's with me, Joaquim, Liam, and Deep. Hafs a note. Hafs, are you okay? Are you behind? What's going on? Behind. Okay, no problem. You can always watch the video again afterwards too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Let's continue. Herman says, my models are messed up. I'll have to fix this later too. No problem, Herman. Again, you can watch the video. I mean, you know how it works, right? Go slow and get it done. So now that I've got these two models, by the way, here's something that I want you to also use, guys. If you're behind and you want to catch up and you don't want to wait around, okay? Online, I have a couple of things for you, right? If you look at the labs folder, I have lab 1 assets where I've put in the gravel cobble texture, the tiles blend, not the completed version, just the starter. I also included 2 more tiles, tile 3 and tile 4, because I created this on my own, right? I also have a main GitHub repo for last section. So if you're behind in any way, or if you want to grab these 2 FBX files, you can certainly do that. Okay, you don't have to wait. If your models are messed up, you can grab these ones, you know, as an example and bring them in. Okay, so Herman, just grab these 2, tile 1 and tile 2. If you're really ambitious, grab all those 4, tile 1, 2, 3, and 4. Grab all of them and bring them into Unity if you're really ambitious. So then, if we're back into Unity, I have those 2 tiles. I'm going to bring the first one into Unity. You can see it goes into the 0, 0 part. And now I want to bring the second one in, but I want to drag it into the scene like so. And what I want to do is I want to use V-snapping, where I use the V key, hold the V key down next to any of the vertices here on the side. If you hold the V key, it turns it on. And then I want to drag the V key so the vertices are connected. You may have a bit of an error on the right side. So the position error, instead of it being 0, is 1 point something or whatever. Just change it to 0 on the y-axis so that the plane is even. Okay? That's the first thing, okay, that we're going to do. We're going to continue to make our level, right? I'm going to zoom out. Now that we have 2 tiles, I want to continue to make tiles by grabbing these 2 tiles and surrounding them with a parent tile, parent game object. We're going to call these this game object tiles. So it's going to be contained in a parent game object. Now I'm going to grab these 2 tiles and I'm going to duplicate them with Control D. Control D. And when I do that, I'm going to pull these tiles over here like this, right? Maybe change perspectives a little bit, like go over here. Now notice there's a copy of both tiles. And what I want to do is on the right-hand side in the Z rotation, because notice Z is up because they come from Blender, I want to change the Z rotation to 90 degrees. Right? Notice that now they look a little different. And what I want to do is I want to pull these tiles in using V-snapping. So I'm going to use V-snapping and the entire tile can be pulled in. And let's just correct the y-axis to 0. Okay, so that's kind of a block of tiles now. Let's do it again so that we have more, right? Select all of them, right? Control D, pull it across, V snapping, and pull it in, correct the Y, and now we have more. And now what we want to do is we could change the Z rotation to like a -90, right? So you can see that that is rotated the other way around. And by the way, it rotates all of them. So it kind of creates these weird patterns where this is everything is -90, right? So you can vary them. You can go, this one is going to be 90. You can be just random. This one can be 270. So they look slightly different than each other, right? This can be 0, right? You know, that kind of stuff. This one is 90. That could be 0, right? So, or -90, and so on. And you can keep on varying these so that they're not all the same looking. So it looks a little bit different. Okay. Now there's some similarities, obviously. We're going to do this one more time, right? And what we're going to do is grab all of these tiles, right? And we're going to pull them this way. So Control D, we're going to pull them all this way. And now we have a large area we can traverse, right, using these two tiles. And later on in another lab, woo, there we go. Another lab, I'm just going to use V snapping here. V snapping, pull them in. In another lab, we're going to do, instead of this, is we're going to procedurally generate our maze. This is good enough at this point. We got enough tiles in here. Save. File, exit. Oh, by the way, let's correct the y-axis issues. Save. File, save projects, and exit. Cool. And now we want to go back into here and we want to say something like created simple maze with tiles. And then commit to main. And we're going to go push origin and we're good to go with that. We're going to go back into Unity after we push that and go back into lab 1. Right. Again, you could have used more of the tiles. I've uploaded 4 tiles to play with, right? And so on. One of the things that I asked you to do for your lab, and I'm going to give you the lab report, is that I only want you to use one of my tiles, and I want you to use all the other ones as yours. So choose one of my tiles when you actually submit this lab, and we'll talk about it in a second, what I'm looking for, because I'm going to put up the lab report after. All right, so cool, we have this thing, and now I want to make my character controller. Let's pick a friendly spot where the main camera is. Here it is. Here's the main camera. Let's pick a spot next to the main camera somewhere, like over here. Now, what I want to do is I want to add a new game object here, like right over here somewhere, right? And I'm going to call this game object. Let's do it together. So I want to add in a new 3D object, which is a cylinder. And let's bring it over to me. So I want to kind of bring it up. And I want to bring it over here. Here's my cylinder. This is going to be representing the character's body in the first-person controller we're going to make. All right. And what I want to do is make a debug material. Let's call it debug material. I called it player material last time, but I think debug material might be better. So a new material, we're going to call this debug material. And the debug material is going to be green. Like this, green. And pull this debug material onto the cylinder, please. Let's rename the cylinder so that it's called player. And let's drag the main camera onto the player, like so. In the main camera, let's reset the position by clicking this little ellipses and going reset. So that's where the main camera is looking right now. It's looking towards this wall. Notice where it's looking, right? That's okay, right? So if I move the player back, right, and I look at the camera, it should see something like this, okay? As long as the player is not like on top of a tile or something, and it's like, you know, something like this, then the main camera should look out at a tile so we can see the tile. This is the main camera's preview. All right, a couple things to do. I want to move the main camera up so that it's barely outside of the gizmos, barely outside of the thing, which is something like, 0.7. Let's put it at 0.7 in height. That's where the camera is going to be. I want to add a layer to the player body. This is the player body. Let's add a layer. So default, I want to add a layer, and I want to call this the player layer. Layer. And I want to go back to the player and apply the layer, player. And I want to say only this object, okay? The main camera, where the calling mask is, you should deselect the player. So you cannot see yourself. You cannot, it's kind of looking through the player's material. Okay, we don't want to see the player material at all. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we have a player and we have a camera. Cool. And we have the player layer. Let's also assign the player to a tag, which is player. And let's also add an empty game object, which we're going to call ground check. The ground check game object, let's add some color to it. We'll make it so it's green too, a green diamond. And we're going to bring it low, pretty low. Something like, 0.6 from the ground. Minus 0.6, if I can be accurate. There it is, minus 0.6. So this is where the ground check, empty object is going to be. This is where we're going to cast. We're going to do a circle cast down here, or an overlap circle, and that's how we're going to do our ground check for this in 3D. Okay. So the player, main camera, and ground check. Okay, that's how we're starting off. Save. File, save. Let's add some scripts. And the first script I want to look is control is the camera controller. Let's go into scripts and let's add a brand new script. We're going to call this camera controller. There's my camera controller. And we're going to double click onto it in a second. And we're going to launch Visual Studio 2019. Okay, this is what the camera controller is going to start looking like. First, I want something called a public float mouse sensitivity. And I want to assign that something like 10, a value of 10. I found that was good earlier today. I want to have a transform, which is going to represent the player body. All right, we have that player body. I'm also going to have a private float, which is going to be the X rotation. We're going to explain that in a second. One day when ReSharper decides to give me control, hey, X rotation. X rotation. And we're going to set that starting off to 0. Cool. And we can put a little header on this, which is really like player cam properties. So header, we can call this the player camera properties. That's what this is. We're going to rename it to player cam eventually. Down inside the start function, we're going to set the cursor lock. So cursor dot lock state. We're going to set that to cursor lock mode locked. So we're going to lock the cursor when we actually click in the scene. So we don't want the cursor flying around, just like we would if we were using a first-person perspective camera, which is what we're doing. Now, in the update function, we're going to have two values, mouse X, which is going to be equal to input get axis, mouse X, that's an axis, and also multiply that by mouse sensitivity. And let's copy paste that. Copy paste that mouse Y, change that to mouse Y. So we're getting both mouse X and mouse Y. We're capturing both those two things. Now, the X rotation. We're going to say that the X rotation is minus equal the mouse Y. And what this is going to do is basically do a inverted mouse. You can decide not to do that. You'll see what that looks like. It'll work actually really nice. And I'm going to say that mathf.clamp. We want to clamp the rotation. That's what I want to do between the beginning rotation, and then negative 90 degrees and 90 degrees. So we don't want you flipping over. That's what we don't want you to flip over with your, with when you rotate your mouse up and down. Okay. Then I'm going to transform my transform.local rotation, right, is going to be equal to a quaternion Euler, and I'm going to type in the X rotation value. And the only thing I care about is the X axis. The Y axis and the Z axis can be 0 for the transform local rotation. And then I want to rotate my player body. I want to use the rotate function across the vector 3 up axes. So that means the Y axis, that's vector 3 up, multiplied by my mouse X. So I'm rotating it around my mouse X. When I move my mouse X left and right, I'm going to rotate my whole player body around. Let's save. And I'm going to take this whole piece of script here and copy paste it inside of your chat window. And you should have all that. All right, so that's what this does. This is going to create my mouse look. Okay, let's try it out and see if it works. I'm going to go back into Unity. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to go to the main camera. We can rename this to player camera. I didn't do this earlier today, but it doesn't matter. And in my player camera, I'm going to drag and drop my camera controller onto the button. Notice that there is a space for player body. Let's drag and drop the player in there. And then when I have that connection, I'm going to press play. And let's see what it looks like. Right? Not bad. If I click in there, then it locks the cursor right away. Right? But I can't move yet. And it's really pretty good. Right? When I move my cursor up, when I move my mouse forward, I look up. When I move my mouse down, I look down. Okay, I can press escape and exit. And to show you this with both the game running and the scene, so you see what's happening with the camera here, let's run it one more time. And you can see what I'm seeing here. And you can see what's happening with the camera. If I look straight up, that's the maximum, that's my clamp. And look straight down, that is also clamped. Okay, that's what I'm doing. So I'm clamping up and clamping down, right and left. Okay, so pretty good. And then I can escape. Cool. Okay, let's pull that back in there and let's click on the scene. So that's the first step. The next step, what I want to do is let's put this up on GitHub. So file, save project, close it off, go on GitHub and push it up. So I'm going to say something like added camera controller, right, for mouse look, right? Commit to main, push to origin. Nice. Go back to Unity. Okay. And you can see now that I'm launching Unity. Here we are. Awesome. And once I've done that, once I've launched to Unity, which is pretty good, I'm going to add the next script. So in scripts, I'm going to go here and add another script. And we're going to call this the player behavior script. And I'll wait for Unity to update it in a second. It did it. And now it's going to be slightly more complex than the camera controller. Let's do a couple of things here. The first thing I want to do is get a reference to something called a character controller. So in order for me to do that, before I get there, let's go back to my character, my player. My player comes with a capsule collider. I don't want it to come with a capsule collider anymore. Let's delete it. So delete, right? Instead, we're going to be using a little hack. So let's first of all get rid of, we'll uncheck the mesh renderer, okay? So now that's where my player was, right? Let's add a new component called character controller. And now you can see that it comes with a capsule collider as well as a rigid body. Character controller is both loved and hated by Unity developers because it has limitations and it's a good hack to get you going in prototyping. And that's what we're going to do with it right now. Okay. So that's step one. So we want to get reference to the character controller in my script, but first I'm going to drag and drop my player behavior in there while we're at it. Might as well. Right? And what I want to do with my player behavior is go in there. So go back to my script. And I want to get a reference to my player. I want to get a public reference, right, to my character controller. Right? So character controller, we'll call it controller. We'll use public reference for now, but we're going to kind of hide it later. And we're going to say that the controller is equal to get component character controller. So really, we could have made this private, right? Because that's just going to be a reference to my character controller. Next, we're going to have a header. And the header is going to be for movement properties. Movement properties. And in my movement properties, I'm going to have the following properties. I'm going to have a max speed. Again, this is nothing new, guys. Maybe 10, a float of 10. Let's make sure that it goes to the next level. I'm going to have a public float. I'm going to manage my own gravity here. Instead of having a set gravity, we're going to set it to -30. That's going to be pretty snappy in terms of us falling and jumping. So that's pretty cool. I'm also going to set up a public float jump height, which I'm going to set to 3. And I'm also going to set a public vector3 velocity, where I'm going to keep track of velocity. Okay. Again, we may decide to make this private later. Max speed, gravity, and jump height are things we set. Velocity is what we want to view. So that's just really for debugging purposes. Later, we're going to make this private, and we're going to put it somewhere else. Next, I'm going to make another header, and this is going to be my ground detection properties. And the first ground detection property is going to be a public transform, which is going to be my ground check. Remember that ground check empty object? I want to have that. I also want to have a public float, which is my ground radius, which we're going to call, we're going to set it to 0.4 by default. I found that 0.4 this morning was a good number. And then I'm going to have my public layer mask. We've done this before, where I'm going to call this the ground mask. And then we're going to have a public bool, which we're going to use for debugging, which is grounded. Let's stop there and let's scroll down to where I want to add a on draw gizmos function. So I'm going to say on draw gizmos, right? And in the gizmos function, what I want is my gizmos.color. Let's make it something like color.magenta, so it's different than the green that I already have. And my gizmos.draw sphere, that's what I want to do. I want to draw a wire sphere. And my draw wire sphere is going to be my ground check dot position as well as my ground radius, just so we can visualize what my sphere cast is going to be like. And then once I have this, please save everything, right? Save it all. Hopefully you got this. It does, but I don't like it. Eric, I'd like to use my own. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of loved and hated at the same time. All right, so I want to go back out to here, and I'm going to get an error because my onDraw Gizmos isn't going to have a reference, but I'm going to give it a reference because I'm going to go to my player, grab my ground check, and drag and drop it into here. And then instantly I see this little sphere. We're quite far away from the ground, and notice that my sphere that's in here and my collider are exactly the same. We need to move my ground check below where it is right now. So let's move it down to like 0.7 or 0.65, something like that. It's got to be below, underneath my my capsule. Within, but underneath. Okay, that makes sense? Because that's going to be my ground check. I also want to move my player object so that it's my my sphere is barely touching the ground. See that? See that right here? Look, see that? How it's barely touching the ground? I want it to touch the ground so that it's going to be grounded. Okay, that's what it's going to be. Again, this is about 2 meters high, so it's about the right height for my my game world. All right, save. And I want to go back and adjust some of these things that we have here. So back to the player behavior. And what I want to do is in the update function, this is where all the fun happens. I'm going to say that is grounded. Here's where we do our raycast. So we're going to do something called physics.checkSphere. That's a pretty good way of doing it. We're going to pass in the ground check.position, the ground radius, as well as the ground mask. And then going back to Unity, I want to change that ground mask in the player so that it is associated with the ground. There is no ground, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Prefabs folder, grab both of those tiles, and make a brand new layer. And we're going to call this the ground layer, right? And I'm going to associate the ground layer with both of those prefabs so that all the tiles that are in my scene are going to have a ground layer. But unfortunately, my player camera is now not going to be able to see them. So I have to go into my mixed culling mask and make sure that ground is selected. Otherwise, my camera will not be able to see the ground anymore. Okay? Nice. So I've done that now. We've selected ground for my player. For my player, you have to, in the ground mask, you got to select, I'm only checking the ground. Okay? Excellent. Let's go back to my code. Save. Let's go back to my code. And now this is a viable way of checking if I'm grounded or not. We should be able to do it right now. All right, let's try it. Save. Going back in here, and let's try it. Let's run it. And what I want to do is inside of the scene, right, in the player, we should see grounded. And if I take the player object and move it up, it should stop grounding. Take a look. So that's how it should be. Very simple. Grounded, not grounded, right? And that's why I want to do it, Eric. I want to have more control, and I want to be able to control how we do a ground check. All right, so going back then, what I want to do next is I'm going to say, let's check to see if I'm grounded, right? And you know what if my velocity is on the y-axis is less than 0? So something like I'm falling, right? What I want to do is I want to make it pull me down a little bit. So I'm going to say my velocity, as an example, on the y-axis is minus 2.0. So it's going to just hug the ground. It's kind of a hack. I find that works really nicely. And I'm going to use float x, which is going to be input.getAxis, and it's going to be horizontal. We've done this before from last semester, right? And float y, let's copy paste. Float y is equal to input.getAxis vertical. Now we use input axis raw. I'm just going to use this one because I want some nuances right now. I may not need that later. And then our vector3 move is going to be equal to our transform.right. So think about what the right side of my object, right, times the x. So that means if it's a positive, this goes from -1 to 1. That means I'll either get a negative value multiplied by right. If I do, I'm going to go left. If it's positive, I'm going to go right, right? -1 to 1. And then plus, I want to add the other vector, which is my transform dot forward, which is kind of a really neat way of doing it. And then multiply that by, instead of the y-axis, let's call this the z because it's on the xz plane, right? So we'll call this multiply by z. And that's going to give me my new vector3, which is a combined transform right multiplied by whatever my input is on the x-axis and transform forward with whatever my input is on the z-axis. If it's 0, if I'm not moving forward, then this would be I'm adding 0. If I'm not moving right, then this would be I'm adding 0. Make sense? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to access my controller. Now, this is the first controller method we're using. We're saying, hey, controller move, right? And I'm going to move whatever my move is multiplied by my max speed, right? And then I'm going to scale it at time.delta time. This one. Okay. So this is the first thing I want to do. Let's see if what happens if I just do this piece. Do I move around now, right? And if I press save, and if I go back to Unity, and if I press play, maybe we can move around now. Let's see what happens. So clicking in there and whoo, right, we're going to run. Run, 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 run. Should be able to do that too. And we can also fall to our death, right? But wait, what? We're not falling to our death. Why? Because if I'm not on the ground plane, I'm not falling down and I can't jump yet. We're going to get that moving in a second. Okay, let's do that. Next. We've done movement across the XZ plane where we're not falling. Let's add gravity. Because remember, we're controlling our own gravity for this thing. So I'm going to say that, okay, what about first if we're jumping? If input.getButton, the jump button, if the jump button is pressed and my isGrounded is true, then we want to jump, right? So I'm going to say that velocity on the y-axis is equal to a mathf, and this is not great, but we're not doing it all the time, just when we're jumping, dot square root. So we're kind of calculating the distance calculation. It's a quick way of doing distance, where I'm already telling you where I want to go. I want to go to this much height, and there's a formula, there's a shortcut, that if I multiply by negative 0.2f, right, and then times gravity, which is a negative times a negative, right, then I'm always going to get a these two things. Why this is negative? Because it's a hack. A negative times whatever gravity is, so 2 times gravity is really what I'm saying here, right? Multiply by my jump height, and the square root of that is what I'm getting, and that number is the squared number that I want. So let's say it'll end up being like 6 meters, right, roughly, and with gravity, taking gravity into effect. That's the velocity on the y-axis, right? And what I want to do next is I want to say that velocity in general on the y-axis is I want to add it to gravity. There's our falling. This is our adding gravity. And I'll multiply that by time.delta time. So that's going to make me fall. So apply gravity. That's what this is, right? And then I'm going to move my controller again. So I'm going to say controller.move, right? Afterwards, I'm going to apply my new velocity, multiply by time.delta time. Again, that's nice scaling. And my friends, please make sure you save everything. And if we do that now, and we go back to if we go back to Unity, we should be able to fall and jump. Let's try this out. So press play, and first thing we want to try is, can we jump? Woohoo, right? We can even jump on top of a building if we want to, right? But what happened? Take a look at our isGrounded. We're not isGrounded anymore. I can definitely fall now, right? Because I'm falling forever and ever, right? That's what's happening. You can see that that's happening. Let's go back. But what happened to our grounded? We were grounded for a second, and then suddenly we weren't. So let's try it again. So grounded, grounded, and then, well, what happened was, look at that. I want to show you something here so you can see the scene. We're not quite low enough. Take a look at that. See that? It's like I need to move, it's an adjustment. I need to move my ground check property to like negative 0.7, right? So let's do that. Negative 0.7, so just a little lower than where we had before. It's an adjustment, save, and then let's press play and try it again. So again, jumping, jumping, jumping. And if I fall, I can fall now, right? Which is pretty good. And that's good. Let's run it again. And we should be able to jump on top of the building now. So again, woo, whoa, hey, there we are. And this, if this is not what you wanted, then you can change your jump height. So it's not 3, it's 2 or whatever you want it to be, right? And we can kind of look around. Now, there's some weird shadows. We're going to deal with that next day and stuff like that. We're going to talk about the quality settings and all those kind of things because there's some problems with some of this stuff. Look at that. Look at that shadow right there. That's really weird. And it's almost like as I approach, the shadow gets more like a clear shadow, but when we're far enough away, it is like colored. That's a quality setting, right? So we're going to get in that, right? And we may want to keep that, we may not, but you can see now we can navigate most of the world, and if we get stuck, we can jump out of it, right? Look at those jagged shadows, right? That's really bad. Those jagged shadows are anti-aliasing issues, right? And we're going to fix that problem. But now you should be able to jump around and navigate your entire scene. Guys, this is lab 1. We made a first-person controller, and we're able to navigate the entire scene. Okay, let's save. File, save. File, save project. And let's put this up on GitHub. And the question I'm going to ask you, what I'm doing that is, are you with me? Mandeep says no. Let's go back into Unity and talk about why. Mandeep, what's going on? Why aren't you with me? Do you need code? What do you need? Again, the projects are a little bit different between you and the previous section, but only slightly. I'm trying to keep it as clean and as same as possible. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is, okay, my character only looks up and down and does not move. Okay, take a look at my script and remember that it's up on GitHub, right? So if you look up on GitHub, right, let's look up there. So github.com, George Brown College. Take a look at my script and compare my script with your script, please. So remember, it's right here. This is it, right? So I'm going to copy that and paste it in there. Check that out and see what you see. What about everyone else? How are we doing? Liam's good. Joaquim's good. Eric's good. How about Herman? Herman, did you make yours work? Or are you still playing around with tiles? They're falling through the ground. What the heck? Make sure 2 things, right? If you're falling through the ground, it could be an effect of when you release do the tiles, all the tiles have a mesh collider? Yes or no? That's the first thing you check. If the tiles don't have a mesh collider, that means when you did the model thing, then in the model you didn't check on generate colliders. Okay, that's possible. And it really also depends on if you added the character controller as well. The character controller comes with the capsule collider. So that, as well as the tiles, will prevent you from falling through. It won't allow you to fall through. So check those things out. That's where I would check first. Okay, one more thing before we go for the day, and I want to talk about the report and what's due for the lab. Okay, because that's really important. A couple things. One, what if I downloaded something from Unity, right, and I want to modify it? Because you're going to come to the point where you have a really cool, you're going to go get an asset package from Unity and you want to modify the asset package. It's too heavy duty. You want to modify the way it looks. You like most of it, but you don't like a part of it. You want to remove a piece of it or something like that. How to do that? Well, what you can do is you can go to Window, and if you go to Package Manager, please. First of all, let's take the look at the packages in the project. Make sure that everything is up to date in terms of what we're looking at. Visual Studio needs an update. That's new. Let's update that to 2.014. That's important because that means you'll have a better experience with Visual Studio. There might be a fix or something else that happened. Version control is usually plastic SCM. We're not going to use that, but hey, what the heck? Let's update that too. And we don't care about Writer. Writer is another editor. So it's just editor stuff that's been updated. Okay. And when we're done this, then I want you to download it. We want to go to the Unity registry, right? Let's go to the Unity registry when this is done. Cool. Unity registry. And then we're going to scroll down. And we're going to scroll down until you see Fbx Exporter. Please install that. We're going to need it because if you download stuff for your assignments going forward, especially for your first playable release, okay, as an example, then you want to have Fbx Exporter in there, because once you have it in, let's suppose I want to export my tile, one of my tiles. I downloaded this from somewhere else. I didn't make it, like this tile right here. So I select the thing I want to export. I go to Game Object, and then I go Export to Fbx. When I do that, it tells me what do I want to call it, what's the path, where do I want to put it. You can decide where you want it to go. Please make sure that the export format is binary. And then when you click Export, it'll actually export the file. So you can export any mesh that you download from the Unity Asset Store with the Fbx Exporter. It's quite a useful tool, and it creates a two-way communication between Unity and Blender. And so you can modify stuff. You don't have to keep it the same way. You can make it your own. You can change the materials, change the colors, do all kinds of stuff, apply textures, and blah, blah, blah. All right, and that's why we want to do that thing. All right, so that's this part. Last thing, what I want to do is I want to talk about, well, first of all, let's put this up on GitHub. So again, we want to close this down. So File, whenever we make a change, even if it's a package, so File, Save Project, File, Save, and Exit. Every time, even if it's a package, we want to put it up on GitHub. Notice that there's like 7 changes where we added a package. So I'll say I added the Fbx Exporter package. Okay, so commit to main, and then I'm going to go push. And it's a really good thing, especially when you're adding packages or downloading assets to your project. Don't download all of them all at once. One at a time, put them up on GitHub. Why? Test it. What if, as a good example, there's a real challenge, like one package breaks your code or something? You can always uninstall it, right? You can always revert if you have to, which I've done many times. Let's go back. So Mandeep says, how do we add it again? We're in Package Manager. You're going to go to the Unity registry, Mandeep. The Unity registry. So when you pull up Package Manager, so Window, Package Manager, you're going to go to the Unity registry, this one, first one. Okay? And there's a lot of other things you can grab from the Unity registry, things that aren't in the project right now. We're not going to do that yet, okay? But it's here. All right, let's talk about the lab, because the lab requirements are there. All right, so I want to kind of put them up on GitHub, and I want to finish this off, and we can say goodbye for today, and I can see you guys next week. So let's do this. So so here's our lab 1 report. I was in the process of finishing it. Thanks, Mandeep. Let's take a look at how it works for your labs. Okay, so your labs, if there's a report, it's an actual document, and it says lab 1 assignment. You put your name in there and your student ID. As an example, it says version control. Created a master repo, added this week's lab to the master repo. Lab folder is appropriately named. Added instructor as collaborator. Yay! If you didn't, or you only have a single commit, this has several commits. So in here, we should say something like, repo has several quality commits, right? Features, bug fixes, etc. Okay, anything that we want to add in, that's what repo has several quality commits. If you only have 1 commit, you're going to lose marks. Okay. Next, character controller, physics. Game physics have been adjusted to provide a better player experience. Character controller component has been attached to the player. Ground check game object has been added and set to the right height. Okay, Mandeep, I'm not sure why. And then you can see that on the left side, physics have not been adjusted, character controller component has not been added to the player, ground check and game object has not been added. If you didn't do this part, you lose your marks, right? Character controller movement. Player behavior script exposes all the correct properties in the inspector. Player behavior script enables player to move and jump appropriately. And then the negative is player behavior script is missing or does not allow the player to jump. Blender. At least 2 maze tiles have been created in Blender. Both maze tiles are textured appropriately. Okay, maze tiles have not been created in Blender, you know, kind of thing. All right, Blender. Maze tile import to Unity. At least 2 maze tiles have been brought into Unity correctly. Maze tile materials textures have been extracted in Unity. Okay, you've done it, but the materials haven't been extracted, or the materials, the import is not proper. Lastly, the Unity maze level. At least 2 maze tiles have been used to create a very simple scene in Unity that the player can navigate within. You're allowed to use up to 1 maze tile of mine or 1 maze tile of yours if you want to, right? You can use multiple maze tiles if you want to create the scene. So notice if I add them up, right? So it's like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 points maximum for your lab, right? And this file is exactly what I want you to pull up when you do your labs. So in your labs, up online now, and I know people have, you know, when it comes to labs, let's talk about the lab. The lab report's been there the entire time. So it says, add your lab 1 folder to the master repo. Ensure that the repo is private. Ensure that the instructor has access. That's me. Complete the lab report mandatory. Create a short video, 1 to 5 minutes, as an example, and use the lab report as a checklist, mandatory. If you don't do the lab report and you don't make the video, you get 0 for the lab, okay? And one thing I wanted to add in here is it's okay to use 1 of the instructor's tiles, all right? At least 1, because that just to give you some flexibility, right? So note, I'll say, right? Note, it's okay to use 1 of the instructor's tiles in your project. Okay, just at least that way you have that. Okay, and submit. This thing is due on Sunday, January 23rd, 2022 at midnight. That's this Sunday at midnight. If you couldn't get it done right now for whatever reason, you have a chance to get it done and try it out again. And there's all your lab assets that have been added in here. The last lab asset I want to add in is the one we did today. If you want to use my code and compare it to your code, I'm trying to give you as much opportunity as possible, right, as an example, so that you can get maximum marks. And really, this is just a learning thing. If you don't submit your labs, well, what can I do, right? But more or less, if you follow along and try, you know, to do what you have to do, at the end of the day, you'll have something that's very close to what mine looks like, if not mine. But try and do it on your own, because I think it'll help you with your world creation stuff. Let's go back in here, and I'll talk about one more thing before we go for the day. All right, so so this will be GAME3004, winter 2022, and section 400, or is it 401? I think it's 401, right? I'm bleary-eyed at the end of the day. I'm so sorry. 401 labs. All right, that's what it is. And then this is the repo for that. So notice it says main GitHub repo section 40. Maybe I should just say that. So let me just copy that. I'll be okay. I'll keep it the same so that there's no issues here. There we go. And so I've given you enough resources here so you can be successful with your lab, I think. Okay, Eric, just to clarify, for the repos, is this to be a repo with 1 project that we will build on per lab, or should it be a repo with individual projects for each lab? You'll most likely got into, yeah, you got it, individual project for each lab. Okay, now let's talk about a couple of administrative issues, okay? Because I know that I had some questions via email. I know some people sent me some email. Remember what's happening. Project part 1 team contract is done. We did lab 1. We need to do the best 8 out of 10. If you miss a lab, as long as you get 8 labs done, you're golden. Okay, even if you miss this week's lab. Okay, you can choose whatever labs you want to do, but you need to do 8 in order for you to get 20% of your final grade. Okay? Remember things that are due this week. Your weekly report number 2 is due. Okay? And also for next week, your project part 2, which is your concept and game pitch presentation, which is worth 5% of your final grade for your entire team, is due next week. Next week, as a cue, right? We have game concept presentations. There will be no lab next week. On Monday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release a sign-up list for you to sign up for either the lecture portion on Tuesday or one of the lab sessions on Thursday for you to present. Okay? All I'm looking for, to make it easy, because you're also going to do a recording, right, of your project, is only the person who is presenting has to kind of be here for that particular thing. I recommend, though, that all of your teammates are with you so I can give you all feedback so you've heard it. Okay, that's what's happening. And that is your game concept presentation. You do not have to show me your GDD. Your GDD is part of the requirement to submit. So you have submission requirements. Let's go back to that because I know people had some questions around this. They were confused or they had just questions. And so that's what it looks like. If you take a look at your project part 2 requirements, it tells you need team introduction, your game concept, and GDD. Your game concept is going to be within your team introduction, right? So let's take a look at that document again because I think it's important to know what I want. So team introductions, your title page, roles, influences, and tools and schedule. That's like who you are and what you're making, that kind of stuff, okay? And then you have a detailed, where's number 2? Haha, I love it. There's no number 2. Number 2 is down here. It should be 2, 3, but that's okay. Number 2 is your detailed first draft of your GDD. That's not you're not going to show me this. What you're going to do with this is you're going to create it. Okay, this is actually should say part 2. Wow, that's what a weird thing I did there. And then finally, your game demo video, your GDD demo video. What you're going to do is you're going to demonstrate it says your game design document here. You're going to discuss your game design document in detail, and you're also going to do this piece. You're going to kind of do this piece for me, and then one thing that's different about your live presentation, this live presentation should take like 5 minutes, right, as an example, but to say, hey, how we're doing, this is us guys, thank you very much, goodbye. But this part, this GDD demo video is going to take more. It should take about 10 minutes. And it's a combination of the thing that's on top of here plus your GDD. Show me what your GDD is about, okay? And so you're going to have a demo video, your GitHub repo, your game design document, as well as a PowerPoint document, for your Google Slides. And what I'm hoping that you're going to do is remember that you want to make your PowerPoint slides as customized as you can because we're going to see them again and again. All right, so question, that's kind of weird. I didn't realize I did that. I'll be okay. All right, any questions around the requirements for next week? So next week is going to be a sign-up sheet. I'm hoping that you guys are going to do a great presentation. I'm hoping that you're going to do that. And it's going to be a lighter week in terms of us being together. But please don't discount the details because remember that after that, the following week, your first playable release is due, and there's quite a few requirements for it. The peer review is due next week as well. So if you look at the peer review, that's your first peer review, and your first peer review is due Friday, January 28th. That's next week. So how did it go? How is it going with your team so far, is what you're saying. Okay. Liam says, so for the lab submission, GitHub repo link, weekly report, and short video that proves that you completed the checklist. That's the lab report. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, the lab report. And when you do the lab report, guys, what I highly recommend is show the lab report in the video. So let's bring up that lab report again. So let's suppose I'm doing the lab right? I'm going to pull up the lab report and I'm going to do something like this. Hi, Tom, my name is, and here's my video, my short video for the lab report. By the way, you don't have to show your face, and I don't need a title slide or anything like that. Okay, just your voice, right? Because by now, we know more about you than before. So you can see that here, you're going to show your version control, right? So you're going to flip to the version control area, and you're going to see, you can see here that I've got my lab 1 inside of a containing folder for my master repo. Okay, so that's this, and you're going to check this out. You're going to go check, highlight, right? And then you're going to say, and you can see that inside Unity, I got my character controller, and you're going to show your parent player, you can show your character controller, and you're going to go into here, and you see, here's my character controller, my player behavior, just as we talked about, Tom, exactly like we did in class. Check. Right? And that covers, Tom, that covers this, and it also covers this piece right here. Okay? And you know what? My Blender maze tile creation, well, you can see what I did. Here's Blender. You might have it, you most likely have it open. You're not going to do what I'm doing right now because you're going to be prepared because you want to keep it short and sweet. And you're going to bring this up and you're going to say, in Blender, Tom, I made 2 tiles. There's tile 2 and there's tile 1. Similar to what you were showing us in class, you can see that there is a texture for the ground layer. Okay, going back. So I made my 2 maze tiles, and I also imported them into Unity. Okay, cool. So let's go into Unity. You can see here that I took those 2 maze tiles and imported into Unity, and what I did was I created prefabs for all of them to create a little tile city, like you asked us to do. So that covers this part and this part. And that's it, Tom. Thanks a lot. Bye. It'll be like that simple, okay? Don't go too crazy. I don't care about code, going through code. If you want to talk about code, you can, but it could be 1 to 3 minutes, like really, really short video. It's better than screenshots. You show me what you're doing and you're done. And if there's something you couldn't do, let's say, for example, Tom, I just couldn't really construct my maze properly, then you mark yourself here, right? Or, Tom, it kind of works, but I don't jump properly. I jump up in the sky and it's like forever. I've tried whatever I can to do what you did, but I can't do it. So it's really, really bad. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't work. It throws errors, behaves really incorrectly. It's this. And you talk about it and you kind of do this thing, you show it during your video. So this is shown during your video. Okay. Any questions around the lab report? So again, the great thing about this is you have a chance to reflect. It also gives you a checklist to make sure you got everything for your lab. And on top of that, you'll have, this is kind of your individual work. My hope is that it'll give you enough technical information so you can be a good member of your team, similar to what we did last semester. But this semester, it actually counts for the stuff that you're doing for 3D. Now, I know that you have Nick, if I'm not wrong, for 3D as well. Yes? So he should be giving you some similar tools with a very different perspective than me. So what I'm hoping is you're going to get tools from him, tools from me, and it's going to help you build out your project. Any questions before we go for the day? Okay. Why don't I stop recording and then I'll take your question. If there's any other questions related to the content or anything else we've covered today, this is your chance to ask it now. All right. Thanks so much, Eric. I'm going to stop recording now and I'll take questions.